B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We are going to, B'ezrat Hashem, going to start a new series named the Iggeret HaGra, based on the letter, which is a Iggeret, that the Gaon of Vilna, alav Shalom, wrote to his family on his journey to Eretz Yisrael, leaving them behind. And there's an extraordinary amount of information that if a person were to simply apply these things to their life, to their marriage, to their work, to their chinuch of their children, simply their lives would be turned in such a way they would feel like they don't need to go to Gan Eden anymore. This is the letter of the Gaon of Vilna, Rabbi Yaron ben Shlomo Zalman Vilna, and B'ezrat Hashem we'll start the series similar to what we did with the Iggeret HaGra, the Iggeret HaRamban, where we go through each and every sentence of the letter to learn, because this is one of those things where there's so much to learn. We can't learn it all in one shiur if we really want to do it justice. And even what we do is only a small token of what can be learned from it over a lifetime of reading it. Tonight's shiur and the series in general will be dedicated to my dear Rabbanit, for her refuah shlema and for hatzlacha and raising our dear children and our beautiful home, Baruch Hashem, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, also for Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, for her refuah shlema and hatzlacha rabba, and our dear Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, also for a refuah shlema for Orit bat Ilana, Talia bat Sarah, Yitro ben Avraham, Stefan ben Katarina, and David ben Esriya, Doris bat Jora, and also for a hatzlacha rabba for David ben Esriya on his journey now to Eretz Yisrael, B'ezrat Hashem, and also hatzlacha rabba to Shaul ben Farzaneh, Yitro ben Avraham, Oshri ben Doris, Gabi ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, Marsha bat Julie, Ayla bat Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Reuven Chaim ben Palaparel, and all of Am Yisrael, especially the ones that are helping us with the kiruv that they're doing, with their time, with their efforts, with the money that they're donating, all of the wonderful people that are helping us do all the things that we're doing, Baruch Hashem. The campaign for Tikkun HaBRIT continues. We're, as I mentioned to you the other day, we're starting a major campaign to send out the different cards that we have all over the place. And B'ezrat Hashem, within the next few days, we'll be mailing out about 150,000 of these to different places, around the Florida and other places, and also another 100,000 of them to all over the country, to different people that want to give them out. The first 150,000 are going to be mailed directly to the people, and the other 100,000 is for any one of you that wants to take some of their time and give out some of these in your community, in your synagogues, Judaica stores, kosher markets, different Jewish centers. You want to put 20, 30, 40 at a time in different places so people can look at the card, go to the site, or go to the QR code and watch the movie Tikkun HaBRIT, and also the Hashem took back his millions, and be one of the millions that have gotten chizuk out of these movies. Baruch Hashem, there's not a day that goes by without getting several messages from new people that have changed their life, and they're coming from all ages, and they're coming from all corners of the world, and they're coming literally by the dozens. Every day more and more people are sending messages, thanking us for making those movies, giving them chizuk, asking for guidance of how to do tshuva, asking for guidance of how to continue changing their life now that they're knowledgeable about the magnitude of the sins and also the damage that it's caused their lives, now that they know where all the problems are coming from. So a lot of people are coming forward. So anyone that's going to be giving these out in their community, either by buying them on the website or simply sending me a message for me to send it to you for free if you don't have any money, or anyone that's donating for the campaign and helping us do all of these things that we're doing, is simply doing chesed in the highest level for Am Yisrael and for their community and for their city and wherever they're doing it, because it's information that is not readily available elsewhere. There are many lectures out there, there are many videos out there, there are many inspiring stories out there, but there is simply no teachings about the issues of immorality and Tikkun HaBRIT like we've made over the last 7 years. It's something that has helped countless people, but this movie is taking it to a different level, because Baruch Hashem, B'siyata Dishmaya, we customize the teachings to the generation itself, and by not changing the teachings, but rather by changing the way the teaching is shown to people. Where in the past you were required to go and review, countless books to learn what you needed to learn. But today, Baruch Hashem, after a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of efforts, a lot of mesirut nefesh, we put everything in a movie where anyone that simply watches that movie and studies it is not only going to be scared to ever sin, but even more so is going to be inspired to change their life. And it's both for males and females, young and old, single and married. Quite a few people have reached out, and literally even in the middle of the night, people are simply saying, listen, I just want to text you just to say thank you, you changed my life. And 99% of the time it's because they got inspired by one of these movies, and of course then they started watching the rest of the lectures. So for anybody that wants to do major chesed for their community and for Klal Yisrael, and also for the righteous among the nations, the Noahides, get these flyers in your community, or at the very least, make your maaser, your 10% that you're supposed to be giving for the sake of Torah, to invest it into this campaign, because this is going to help a lot of people, as it already has. We're approaching 2 million views across the different channels, which is out of this world. I mean, we've literally are almost surpassing the Hashem Took Back His Millions that's already been out for a year. And we're already surpassing it almost, I would say, within about a month and a half. So that's how much there's a need for this. Aside from that, we also have our campaign for Shavuot to help the poor Jews in Eretz Yisrael, especially families of the religious people that are avrechim, people that dedicate their time to Torah, their entire lives to Torah. If you just go to bhdonate.org, you want to sponsor a family or 10 families or 50 families, that's the place to go, unless you want to send a check in the mail. That's also good. But I always tell people when they ask me, listen, if I send a check in the mail, maybe I'll save some money on the transaction fees, the 3% or whatever it is. I'll save myself, and I always tell them, listen, whatever is fastest, do that. And the reason why is because if you have an inspiration to donate, it's best to donate as soon as possible, because if you wait until you send a check and you put it in an envelope and you put a stamp and you forget the stamp and you do all these different things, many times what ends up happening is that the Yetzer Hara gets into your head and you either don't send it or the amount that you send goes down drastically. I mean, just a few days ago, I had somebody tell me that they wanted to send some money. They didn't send it right away. They waited like 2 days. By the time they sent it, it literally went down by 90% from what they said already that they're going to send. I didn't tell them anything. They know who they are, and it's just a reality. I'm going to donate X amount of money. Okay, they don't donate that day. The next day, 2 days later, it drops by 80%. Of course, everybody has good reasons, especially the Yetzer Hara, but that's why I tell people that paying those transaction fees by doing things on the website is not just a convenience fee, it's a Yetzer Hara fee. It's a Yetzer Hara fee. We don't make any money out of it. This goes to the merchant banks. But the point being is that it makes sure that you I've made that commitment. Even and this happens many times. I had a nice woman want to send money about a month ago. It couldn't work because of the banking issues. Long story short, took her a few days to fix it. Fixed it. She got the money back, but never sent it again. Why? To give the Yetzer Hara a week to mess with your mind and your bank account and your job and everything else will surely have its impacts at times. So it's very important to know that we have to be like Avraham Avinu, where he woke up in the early morning to bring his son Yitzchak to the Akedah, because he knew that anyone that wants to fulfill a mitzvah has to hurry up as soon as possible and don't even give the Yetzer Hara any opportunity. These are some of the teachings that we've learned from our rabbis, we've learned from our sages, and this too is some of the things that we're going to discuss in this amazing series, Bezat Hashem. Our last series that we just completed, Baruch Hashem, the series of the Era of Mashiach by Rav Wasserman, is all available online for free. Anyone that wants to watch it, you can watch it on our app, the Bezat Hashem app. You download the app either on Google or on iPhone, BEEZRATHASHEM on the App Store, and you'll be able to watch the lectures without any interruption. Or you can go to our new website, tikkunhabrit.org, TIKKUNHABRIT.org, and you can watch the lectures there without any distractions, and you don't have to go to YouTube or anywhere else. So Baruch Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us many different ways to share Torah to this current generation, whether it's on the apps or on YouTube or on Facebook or on the Roku TV, different ways, meaning that the Torah is being given to this generation on a silver platter. But there are certain teachings that simply are rare. They're rare because not everyone wants to deal with it. Not everyone wants to have the headaches that come with it, because when you deal with these types of sensitive teachings, whether it's the teachings of Pagam HaBRIT, which is immorality, and the real details of it, or it's the teachings of the reward and punishment, especially the punishment part, a lot of headaches come along with it from the Yetzer Hara. He sends all of his soldiers with all types of heretical claims or all types of complaints. So it takes a lot. So I understand why certain people don't want to teach it, but the part that we obviously fight against is when people misteach it, where they not only don't teach it, but when they do decide to teach it, they distort the truth to the point of destroying neshamot. And that's one of the things that the Gaon of Vilna was very well known for, to fight for the truth to the highest level. And we'll see that in the letter itself, a letter that to the average person may seem like, why would we be reviewing a letter? Why don't we review one of his books? Why don't we review one of his psak, halacha? Why don't we review other things? Why a letter to his family? As we read this letter, Rabotai, you'll understand within minutes why this letter is something that must be learned on a regular basis, just like we have to learn on a regular basis the letter from the Ramban and many of the other sages that wrote letters to each other and to their families and to different people that may or may not seem like a big deal to some people, but as the Gemara says in a Masechet Sukkah, page 21b, where it actually the Chachamim discuss this type of information, where Rabbi Shimon says that we have a teaching. We have a teaching here that, like the teachings of Rav Acha Bar Ada, who taught, we also have it in the name of Rav, that even casual conversations of the Torah scholars required to be studied, as there are lessons to be learned from them. So here we have a Gemara Meforeshet to tell us that even the basic conversation of a Torah scholar, the Gdolei Ador, the giants, the average Talmid Chacham that's dedicated to Torah, they must be learned. Why? Because if they are a Talmid Chacham, needless to say, if they are Gadol Ador, a giant sage in their generation, then surely their behavior is during their mundane tasks, if you will, represents that as well. It's not that they're just showing their scholarship and their wisdom during the time where they're teaching or where they're learning, but rather even a casual conversation or a letter to their wife and children. Surely that will also show their wisdom and how they manage their life. This is one of the reasons why the Mishnah in Avot many times starts with the words Hu haya omer. Hu haya omer is he used to say. Why doesn't it say he said? Why does it say he said? Why does it say he used to say? What does he used to say? Chachamim say Hu haya omer means Hu haya oseh. Who? He used to say, meaning he used to do. He was it. He was the one that he was talking about. Whatever he said is what he did. Not like the hypocrites of the world that say one thing but do another. They give you a lecture about how you should protect your health, but they smoke a cigarette or do other unhealthy things, 20 minutes after the lecture. There was one famous doctor that gave a lecture to a huge group of kids in yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael about the dangers of smoking. And he wanted, the yeshiva, after lots of effort, brought this person to teach the kids so they don't start smoking cigarettes. You have to make sure you teach your kids these things early on before they get addicted or fall into the trap of the Yetzer Hara. So they had this guy who was a very well-known and respected doctor in the field, and dealt with a lot of lung cancer and so on. And he gave them a whole talk about how lung cancer is terrible. He deals with people every day. There's issues of life and death on a regular basis, of the damage that it causes. Don't ever do it. All this talk for almost an hour. After he completed his talk, yes, somebody have give me a cup of water, please, or coffee or something. And of course, sure, he got it. He's like, okay. And he stepped out to the balcony. They had a balcony in a place. And everyone is, inspired. Wow, we're never going to smoke again. Whoever's smoking wants to quit. Whoever didn't smoke is not even considering smoking. But surely they're so inspired by this teacher, they're looking at, what is he doing? Why is he going to the balcony? Like, okay, what's in the balcony? And they're all following and they're all looking at him. And they all see him get to the balcony and pull out of his pocket a pack of cigarettes, light one up, and start smoking. Immediately, one of the Rabbaim comes to him and says, what are you doing? What are you doing? You just gave us a whole talk for an hour and inspired all these kids to stop smoking. Why are you ruining everything right now? What are you doing? The doctor looks at him, listen, I teach, I tell you what to do, but it doesn't mean that I do it. Meaning he saw no crime in his actions whatsoever. And that's unfortunately the way of the Yetzer Hara. That's the way of the secular world. And it didn't start with him. It started with the teachers of his teachers, just like Aristotle, who used to teach a lot about morals and philosophy and things of that nature. But when one time his students walked in on him eating, they saw him crouching like a dog, eating from a bowl without his hands, but literally eating like a dog from a bowl. And when they asked him, teacher, why are you eating like this? You look like an animal. And Aristotle comfortably says to them with no hesitation whatsoever, saying, when I eat, I'm not Aristotle. Meaning that what I teach you is what I teach. Doesn't necessarily mean that I do it. Well, I have a desire to fulfill. He did the same thing when it came to one of his students, his main student, Alexander the Great, Alexander Macedon, also known as, where he tried provoking Alexander Macedon's wife to be intimate with him, and got caught by Alexander himself when the wife, who couldn't stand Aristotle when he came on to her, She told him no, but he kept coming on to her from time to time. And one of the things that she hated most about Aristotle is the fact of how he was admired and practically worshipped by our husband, who was practically running the whole world. He conquered more of the world than anyone after him. This is not before him because there was Nebuchadnezzar, but he was the most powerful king of his time, and until the Mashiach comes. And she hated how much Alexander admired this Aristotle. She hated it so much. So when she saw that he's really not who he says he is, he has desires just like any other man that he can't control, which is completely pitiful, especially to a married woman. One time when her husband came back from a war, after winning and gloating that he followed the advice of his teacher, Aristotle, she told him that, your Aristotle is not as great as you say he is. He's really a womanizer. Alexander got so angry that he took out his sword and almost killed his wife. How could you talk about my teacher this way? And she told him, if you want, I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. He said, how are you going to prove it to me? He said, just come to this place at this time and you'll see. And that's what she did. Next time that Aristotle came on to her, she told him, okay, if you want, meet me at such and such place. We obviously can't do it in the palace. Meet me at such and such place. And that's what we'll be there. We'll be together there. And that's what they did. They went there. And she told her husband, hide under the bed. Hide under the bed. And as soon as Aristotle came in, he said, okay, let's go. And she said, no, before we do what you want, I want to get something. She said, what do you want? Anything you want, honey. Anything you want. She said, I want to ride on top of you like a pony. That's what I want. Aristotle didn't really care. He wanted to get his desire fulfilled because he's simply a beast. And he said, sure, why not? Come on. I'll give you a ride. And as she is jumping on top of him, he looks below the bed and he sees that there's someone under the bed. He says, who's under the bed? She says, oh, let's see. And Alexander the Great comes out furious at his teacher, but could not bring himself to kill him. But he tortured him for many years after that. There's also a letter in the Midrash Me'am Loez that later on in his life, Aristotle wrote a letter to his number one student, Alexander, and told him that he should burn all of his books because he has learned that everything that he's ever taught is completely bogus, is complete nonsense, and anyone that learns it is going to be punished because he, over the last several years, he's discovered the Torah, he's learned it, and he's realized that the Torah of the Jewish people, the persecuted people, is the Word of God, is the only truth that exists. Of course, you're not going to necessarily find this letter in your local Barnes and Nobles or your store. They're not going to make a book about just this letter like they did for our sages, our holy sages, the Iggeret HaGra. But nonetheless, you will find this letter. It's available. You'll see it in the Midrash Me'am Loez. Has a copy of it in there, as well in other Jewish sources. The point being, Rabotai, is that one of the great things that we see from our sages is the teachings of Hu Haya Omer, that he used to say, meaning that he used to be. Now, before we go into the words of the sages, it is critical for us to know who they are. Because as the Gemara in Yerushalmi, in Masechet Shabbat, in the first chapter, Halacha number 2, says that whoever says a teachings in the name of someone must feel and, in essence, see their teacher, the person that said it, in front of them while they're saying it. Why? Because if you're like one of these heretics that just decides to say whatever he wants and say, no, the Rambam said it. Where did he say it? He said it. Okay. And they tell you another heretical thought. The Baal Shem Tov said it. When did he say it? Where did he say it? He said it. They don't give you a source. And the reason why is because the source doesn't exist. The source doesn't exist from the sages saying words of heresy. But they'll say it, and many times they've even gotten to the point where they don't even say a source. They don't even say a source because they have a certain image Well, people simply assume that they have a source. Just like somebody came to me today, they're having a discussion with some rabbi, some local rabbi that they have, and the rabbi says that, who is this Yaron Reuven think he is? He's going against all these rabbis. He should know that these rabbis all have sources from the early sages for the things that they say. So what he's saying, who is he bichlal? Who does he think he is? And the truth is, every single time that we've brought and exposed one of these heretics, whether it be Manis Friedman, or it be the Dror Kasuto, or the rest of the heretics that may Hashem blot their names out of history, all of these people, one common denominator that all of the heretics have is they do not have a source for anything that they say, and they don't even try to bring a source anymore. But yet, their defenders, whether they be rabbis or laymen, always assume they have a source. Why? Because people are naive and unfortunately sometimes outright stupid. Or worse yet, they simply want the heresy to be true, so much so that they simply have to force themselves to believe it and justify it, even if that means that they're going to lose their olam haba, because according to their teachers, there is no such thing as far as a bad version of olam haba. The biggest thing that you're going to learn from this Iggeret, from this letter, is that the Gaon of Vilna, the Gra, as he's also known as, is not holding any punches. He's not holding back in any way. He talks about reward. He talks about punishment. He talks about some heavy things. And even more so, he's talking about it in such a simple way, in such a way that you would think he's just having a casual conversations. You just think that he's talking to maybe other scholars, but instead he's actually talking to his family. Now, the Gaon of Vilna, one of the things that a person needs to know is that there's really no description. There's no description that would suit him as being sufficient. And the reason why is because just like the other sages that we have, there's no capacity for the human mind to comprehend their greatness and how much they sacrificed in their life and how much they have toiled for what to earn Torah and to teach Torah and to do everything that they were doing. There's just no understanding of how much they loved the Jewish people, how much they loved Hashem. There's no understanding. What we see is their work, but the more a person learns the work of the sages, the more they understand why it is simply criminal to disregard the sages or even consider them as if they are just like us regular people. When you hear somebody say, oh yeah, the Gaon of Vilna, yeah, no, okay, he was smart, but he had natural ability, that's why. Or he was smart, but I think that what they say about him is exaggerated. And other nonsensical things like that. Or perhaps they say things like, oh, Gaon of Vilna, Rashi, okay, they said it, so what? So what if they said it? They could be wrong. This, Rabotai, is a crime. It's a crime in the Torah, and it's simply a crime because when a person criticizes another person, at the very least, they should know who they're criticizing. But many times, the people that criticize are so ignorant of what is being said and who said it that you don't even know why they're even having a conversation. Similar to how somebody just walks into a surgery room and starts criticizing the surgeon for what he's doing and how he's cutting the person up. And when he's asked, well, okay, let's give you the time of day before the security gets here and arrest you. You're criticizing us how we're cutting up his chest open and entering his heart. Fine. Why are you criticizing it? Why do you think it's wrong? I mean, do you have medical expertise in this field? No. Do you have a medical expertise in the field in general? No. Are you a doctor? No. So, did you study medicine? No. So what gives you the right to think that you'd write? Oh, I watched some shows on television, on the internet, and I saw that there is sometimes, the doctors on the show that I watched, they start from the right side where you started from the left. They were doing a surgery on the abdomen, and you're doing a surgery on the heart, so it must be wrong because if I saw it on TV, it must be right. And that's, as ludicrous as that is, unfortunately, that is society today. Everyone today has become not only a chemist, but also a diagnostician. Everyone has an opinion, but a strong opinion about the coronavirus and the vaccines and how either it's going to kill or it's going to cure, and everyone's going to give you sources. What sources? Different videos that they've watched, and everyone is so confident that they're right. The whole world is confused, but you're right. No one knows what's going on, but you do, because you watch some YouTube videos about somebody saying their opinion. No, but look, this doctor is very reputable. He said that the whole thing is a sham. Okay, but there's just as many doctors on the other end that don't say it's a sham. Yeah, well, they're being paid. They're being paid off. Well, how come you don't say that about him? Why don't you say that he's getting paid off? Why? Because it hurts your bias. It hurts your argument. Why don't you just keep your opinion to yourself? Go perhaps spend more time learning about your own profession that's actually expertise. You don't want to get the vaccine? Don't get the vaccine. No one's obligating you yet. No one's obligating you. You don't want to get the vaccine? Don't get it. You want to get the vaccine? Get it. No problem. But the point being is, don't start preaching to the whole world about how you know better than everyone else, and it's either a conspiracy on one end or a conspiracy on the other. And as I've told people many, many times over these last several months, anyone that wants to make a decision in regards to the vaccine or anything else in their life has to go by what our Gdolim say, what our sages say. There are sages on both sides. There are sages that say take it. There are sages that say stay away from it. Either way, everyone has their own predisposition of what they want to do anyway. But if you do what you want because the sage said it, again, whether to do it or not to do it, but you do it because the sage said it, then the holiness of the Torah will protect you. But if you do it because you've watched one too many YouTube videos and read one too many waste of time Bitul Torah articles on the internet, that's the reason why you're taking the vaccine or not taking the vaccine or making any type of decision in your life, surely you're leaving yourself in harm's way. You're leaving yourself in harm's way because you're making a decision that's simply depending on knowledge that you don't have and on a reputation that you're not necessarily so familiar with because you just met this doctor or speaker, whoever he is. But when you rely on the sages, it's not a matter of their expertise in medicine anymore. It's a matter of their reputation in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu will change the world just for the sake of the sage, because they are his representatives. When a person understands that, how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu favors the sages, then you'll understand why you have to follow them, whether it's A or it's B. But you follow them, you'll always be right. You'll always be right. This is why I always tell people that no one in the world has ever lost by doing a mitzvah. No one's ever lost by doing a mitzvah. Now you can say, wait a minute, but this whole disaster, tragedy that happened in Meron, on Lag BaOmer, 45 tzaddikim died, surely they lost. They were doing a mitzvah. They were praying. Wrong. They did not lose. In your eyes, they lost because you see this world like Manis Friedman sees the world, where he sees this world as the climax of creation. He thinks that this world is the most important place in the world, so much so that he even says that eventually it's the goal of everyone is to bring God to this world. Similar to like the Christian beliefs. Bring God to this world, bring the Messiah to this world, everything in this world. No one wants to die, everyone wants to live, be in this world. That is a lowly, heretical belief. This world is simply a corridor. And there's literally countless sources in the Torah, in Sifrei Musar, in the Gemara, in the Zohar, that talk about how this world is simply a corridor. That's all it is. It's a corridor, whereas the Olam Haba is what we're all here for. We're working to earn our place in Olam Haba. That's what we're all for. And when a person understands that those tzaddikim that died in Meron, whether it was a conspiracy by the government and the police officers to kill religious Jews, from the many reports and videos that are coming out showing how it was literally something that was practically planned. Removing screws from the bleachers before, removing all of the cameras and the security a day before the whole event. A lot of craziness has happened, even videos of them beating up religious Jews instead of saving them. Insanity. Still, they didn't lose. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu used the wicked people to do the wicked things that they wanted to do anyway. And the tzaddikim, they're in Gan Eden. They didn't lose. Why? They went to the place they are working to get to anyway, early. That's all they did. We lost because we have 45 less tzaddikim in the world. So for that we mourn. But they did not lose during the mitzvah. They actually got a ticket to the highest place you can get to. They died on Kiddush Hashem. And that's when a person understands that this world is simply a corridor and Olam Haba is the place that we all want to get to. When you realize that those people are in heaven right now with Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva, they're there. They're learning with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai right now in Yeshiva of Shamayim. What's better than that? Alvay Alenu to go and learn with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. B'ezrat Hashem, after we help more people do tshuva, so at least we have some type of merit in the world. But nonetheless, the point is that we have to understand that this world is simply a corridor. That's also one of the things that the Gaon of Vilna discusses with his family. That's also one of the things he discusses with them. So who was the Gaon of Vilna? Who was the Gaon of Vilna, Rabotai? The Gaon of Vilna was born Rabbi Eliyahu ben Shlomo Zalman and lived in Vilna. This particular Iggeret, this Iggeret HaGra, was printed countless times after first obviously being sent to his family. One of his Talmidim publicized this letter, and because of the immense teachings that literally could not be ignored by the generation. And Rabbi Eliyahu ben Shlomo Zalman was born on the 15th of Nisan, the year 5480, which is 1720 according to the Gregorian calendar. And he was someone that was acknowledged as special very early on. He aside from coming from a extraordinary family, where on his father's side he descended from Rabbi Moshe Rivkash, who was the author of the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch called the Be'er HaGolah. So he came from an extraordinary family, but that was not even the beginning of it, because by the age of 3.5 years old, the Gaon of Vilna already knew the entire Tanakh by heart. Most of us don't even know our prayer in the morning by heart. To know the entire Tanakh by heart, alvay aleinu rabotai. At 3.5 years old, it was already shown that this was a very special person. It was a very big neshama in a small body. And the letter itself was written in Germany, in Königsberg. And this is just one of the teachings that you see from the Gaon of Vilna of what kind of chinuch he gave to his kids, because many times people view, religious people, especially the big sages, as if they're so removed from the world and society that they're probably also removed from their family. They're probably also removed from their family. They probably ignore their kids. They probably don't pay attention to their wives and things of that nature. And there's really no lie bigger than that. There's simply no lie bigger than that, because even a person that is not willing to spend their time to read the works, the endless works of the Gaon of Vilna, which literally covered the entire spectrum of the Torah, if he just simply spends time reading this particular letter, we'll see that just like Rabbi Michael Yehuda Lefkowitz pointed out that out of all the topics that the Gaon of Vilna discussed in this letter, there was no topic that he covered more than the discussion of his children, of how much he loved his kids and how concerned he was about his kids. And this is one of the things that you see right from the first couple of sentences in this letter. Now, the letter itself was, as I said, written to his family because he decided that he's going to make a trip to see Eretz Israel, which in those days was not like today where you simply buy a ticket on the internet and go on a plane, and after being tortured through security, you're there within half a day. It didn't work out like that. There was no planes, there's no automobiles 300 years ago. This is one of those times where you have to understand that the magnitude of such a trip was literally a life risk. Simply a life risk. Now, the Gaon of Vilna lived 78 years in this world before his neshama went to Gan Eden. And throughout those 78 years, the Gaon of Vilna dedicated his entire life to learning Torah, so much so that he removed himself from the mundane, removed himself from materialism, to the extent where he was not willing to sleep for more than a half hour at a time. Sleep more than a half hour at a time was not necessary. All he trained himself to do is to sleep for a half hour, get refreshed, because he wanted to go back to the Torah. Surely you would have to do this a few times a day, I'm assuming, at least maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. I don't know how many times. Some people say he only slept a total of 2 hours a day. That's not so hard to believe. I know a few people that sleep only 3 hours a day, and they're not even a 1% of 1% of what the Gaon of Vilna was. But the point being is that when he was awake, it's not such rocket science to sleep less. It's unhealthy in many cases, and it's could be even detrimental to a person's health. But that's not such a big deal. Like if you say, oh, listen, I only sleep 3, 4, 5 hours a day, doesn't really mean anything. There's a lot of people that work so hard in their construction job or other types of professions that they don't sleep much. They sleep 4 hours a day. Many times people admire celebrities and CEOs because they hear that they only sleep 4 hours a day, and wow, it's amazing. But that's not what makes those, experts and big people in the world big. The fact that they sleep less doesn't make them big. There's plenty of people that are successful that sleep much more. Sleep 8 hours a day. Some even sleep even more, which is a complete waste of time. But nonetheless, the amount of sleep doesn't necessarily mean much. It's what you do when you're awake. What do you do during the time that you're awake? If you're awake for 16 hours a day, what did you achieve during those 16 hours? If you're awake for 20 hours a day, what did you achieve during those 20 hours? What did you do? The Gaon of Vilna achieved a milestone after milestone with each and every single hour that he lived. And as we'll see from the letter, you'll see what we're talking about, where it wasn't just his dedication to the Torah, but also his dedication to his family, to making sure that his kids were taken care of, that his wife was taken care of, that his mother was taken care of, and nonetheless that his community and the world at large was taken care of. Rav Mazuz, one of the current Gdolei Ador, when he was a young boy, he says that he asked his father, the Gaon of Rabbi Matzliach Mazuz, he asked him, Abba, who is this Gaon of Vilna? Who is this Gra that everybody keeps mentioning in the Shiurim? Who is he? And the Rav says to the young Rav Mazuz, he says to him, the Gaon of Vilna is a person that completed the Shas 1,000,000 times. Now later on in his life, as he got older, Rav Mazuz says, I understood that what my father said was Guzma Be'alma, which is exaggeration. Exaggeration. Not exaggeration because there is a limitation to the Gaon of Vilna, but exaggeration in the sense that it's trying to teach us a lesson of how much of a giant, how much of a Gaon that the Vilna Gaon was, that literally he might as well have finished the Shas 1,000,000 times. Or what he did, you wouldn't really know the difference because he literally had no secrets of the Torah hidden from him. No secrets of the Torah hidden from him. Now, and this is actually what Rav Aaron Kotler is quoted in a sefer, in a sefer that Ruach Eliyahu, and where he says that the Gaon of Vilna was the light of the world, and through his holiness and purity was spoken about from corner to corner of the world. Our teacher, our rabbi, Rabbi Eliyahu, the holy Chassid of Vilna, who had known all of the secrets of the Torah and is now teaching us. Here he's commenting the Rav Aaron Kotler, which is one of the greatest rabbis in history, needless to say, one of the founders of American Judaism, the Haredi part of American Judaism, the yeshiva system of American Judaism, has a endless amount of gratitude and obligation to Rav Aaron Kotler, who was a Gadol Hador himself. And he said he was commenting on one of the Kabbalistic works of the Gaon of Vilna. Now, in a sefer called Sefer Oel Eliyahu by Rabbi Chaim ben Yitzchak Mivlozhin, on page 14, he says, "Who is wise and will listen to his words," meaning the Gaon of Vilna's words. "Who is wise and will listen to his words? Now that we merited to have the light of the world that came to bring the Tikkun, the rectification to the generation and to the future generations with complete purity." These are not just regular people commenting, but these are the Gedolei Hador. These are the biggest sages of their generation commenting on the Gaon of Vilna. Now, the Gaon of Vilna also had people that were not buying it. They would hear his name time and time again and simply think it's an exaggeration, just like heretics think today. It's an exaggeration. So in one particular event, well-known story, there was a doctor, a professor, that was part of the Enlightenment movement, the heretics that brought tragedy to the world and Am Yisrael especially, by distorting the Torah, by going against the Torah, and in essence from there is where the lefty liberal movement of the world and what's ruining the world today stemmed from. And one of these professors that did not follow Torah, did not follow mitzvot, did not follow anything, and hated the Torah and hated religious Jews and so on. But he kept hearing this name, the Gaon of Vilna, and it irritated him to no end. That people spoke so highly of him regardless of who they were, whether they were religious or not so religious, rabbis, students, old, young, everyone spoke highly of him. He says, I have to meet this guy, but he's not going to meet some maskil, some heretic. He's not going to meet us. These people are going to kick me out. So what did he do? He put on a costume to look like someone that was leading the community in Italy, the Jewish community in Italy, and needed to talk to the Rav about the tragedy of the missionaries, the Christian missionaries, and what they're doing to the Italian community. So, as you would have it, he arranged the time to go travel and go meet the Gaon of Vilna, to go see who is this Gaon really. Is he someone that's really, they don't stop exaggerating about him, you say all these stories about him, or is he even half of what they say? Who is he? So he came to him as someone that was leading the community and said, listen, Rabbi, we have a very big problem in the Italian community because of all of the Christian missionaries that are coming to the community. They're causing a lot of confusion because they're bringing up a lot of questions. How many questions? 70 questions that we have no answers for. 70 questions, a lot of questions. Gaon of Vilna says, go ahead and ask. So the maskil says this. Question number 1. And he says the question. Waiting for an answer. The Gaon says, no, continue. Okay. Question number 2. Ask the question, then wait. He says, no, just continue. Keep going. Question number 3, keep going. 4, 5, 6, 7. He keeps asking the questions without a single answer. I mean, what's the point? He's going to forget. I'm going to have to go over it again. But this is what he wants. He keeps asking the questions after he completes asking all 70 questions without a second of hesitation. The Gaon of Vilna says the following. Question number 1, number 7, number 15, number 18, number 34, number 47, and number 52 and 69 are all the same exact question, just different words. Question number this, and this are also the same question. In so many words, after he gives him all the connections and shows him clearly that these all 70 questions are really only 7 questions. They're just 7 questions being rewarded in 10 different ways each approximately. And these 7 questions have one fundamental issue. And then he gives him an elaborate explanation, a detailed explanation, answering every single one of these fundamental questions with length. A private lecture. Now, after he said it, one of the things that the Gaon of Vilna said was not accepted by this maskil, by this heretic. And he says, but the rabbi said such and such. What is the source for what the rabbi said? The Gaon of Vilna responds to him, this is a clear Rashi. Rashi says it. I didn't invent it. Rashi says exactly what I said. So the maskil says, so what if Rashi said it? As if Rashi could be wrong. Our great sage, the Rav of all of Am Yisrael, 900 years ago from France, as if he's just like us. So what if Rashi said it? Immediately the Gaon of Vilna turned his chair around, gave him his back, and stated, our Torah Kedosha tells us, it is forbidden to look at the face of a Rasha. Forbidden to look at the face of a Rasha. You have just desecrated, disrespected our sage. He tells his shamash, bring him to the Beit Din on the crime of desecrating the name of the Chachamim. Immediately the shamash took him and they brought him to the Beit Din, the Jewish court. At the Beit Din, over there in Vilna, the Beit Din ruled the land. They judged him. He didn't think much of it, didn't care about admitting it, didn't think it was anything. They judged him guilty. What's the punishment? You're going to be on nidui and cherem. What does that mean? They put him in a cage right at the entrance of the synagogue, in the Bet Midrash. And every single time somebody comes in or leaves the synagogue, they spit in his face. That's what it was. For an extended period of time, that's how he was. He was in this cage being spit on by the entire community. It was a mitzvah to spit on him. Mitzvah to make him look as awful as he should look, for desecrating our Chachamim by saying something that unfortunately today is very common, where people think, oh, so what if Rashi said it? So what if such and such sage said it? Sometimes the people have such audacity, they even write it and even say it in videos, and even dare to call themselves rabbis. But this, Rabotai, is a crime according to our Torah. And at that time, where the Beit Din of Am Yisrael ruled, and this is only a couple of 100 years ago, and it was in Vilna, a person like that would be punished. Now this maskil, after serving a sentence, left, did not do tshuva, but wrote, it is worth it to go back to the Gaon of Vilna and again get to the Beit Din, get arrested, be spit on and beat up and whatever, just to have an opportunity to see the Vilna Gaon. Just to see the Gra. It's worth it, all of that. On such people, The Gemara says, Reshaim, even these wicked people, even at the gate of Gehenna, they don't do tshuva. They're so arrogant and addicted to their desires that even if they know they're wrong, they simply are refusing to change their ways. So even the wicked people admired and understood the gadlut, the significance of the Gaon of Vilna, where how somebody could literally remember every single word that you said for 70 questions, repeat every one of those questions back to you, show you exactly how all 70 questions are really 7 questions, because the story is a lot more details than this, because the guy didn't agree with him initially that it's really less questions. And the Gaon of Vilna explained to him how this and this and this and this and this question are all the same. And he agreed that they're all the same, and they're really all, instead of 70, they're only 7 questions. That in itself is extraordinary. To give the answers and the elaboration and so on was something that no one has ever seen, no eyes have ever seen. That is just one of the many stories about the Gaon of Vilna. Furthermore, Rabotai, the Gaon of Vilna is known to that from his own Talmidim. From his own Talmidim, his main Talmid being the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, that Rabbi Chaim Volozhin said that each night the Gaon of Vilna would tell us, told him at least on one occasion, that each night angels knock on his door. Angels knock on the door of the Gaon of Vilna, begging him to let them in so they could teach him Torah. And each night he tells them, I'm not interested. I want to toil for my Torah. I don't want it gifted to me. I want to work for it. I enjoyed the work for it. I want to work for it. And one time, during one of his study sessions, the Gaon of Vilna closed his eyes for a moment. And as I said, the Gaon of Vilna didn't sleep very much, so for him to close his eyes is not exactly a bad thing. But after he closed his eyes for just a few minutes, Rabbi Chaim Volozhin moved him a little bit, or made some type of move to wake up the rabbi, so he doesn't he doesn't waste time. He's sleeping. And the Gaon of Vilna says to him when he wakes up, Oi, why did you wake me up? He didn't know what to do. He says, you don't understand. When I closed my eyes, they took me up to Shamayim, and the angels taught me over 2,000 commentaries. 2,000 commentaries on the verse that we're learning right now. 2,000 commentaries on the verse that we're learning right now. So the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin says to him, okay, Kvod Harav, please, teach us. He said, even if I taught you 24 hours a day for 80 years, I would not finish what I just learned in those few minutes I was asleep. Such was the Gaon. Such was the Gaon, but that's also an example of how when you sleep, your neshama has no concept and no relation whatsoever to space and time. Space and time, as even the scientists in the world know, is only connected when there's material, but your neshama is not a physical thing. So when you dream, there's no concept of time, and this is something that you could even know yourself, or at the very test yourself, where you'll see that sometimes a person can fall asleep for just a few minutes, but when he wakes up, he can tell you about some type of experience, and sometimes, many times, a nightmare that to them felt like 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. Literally, not just literally, they felt that they were somewhere for hundreds of years, even though it was only 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How is that? Your neshama, when it leaves your body and you're in dreamland, doesn't have any connection to time. There is no time in the world of neshamot. There's no time. This, Rabotai, was another story of the Gaon of Vilna that's well known. Another time, the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin saw that the Gaon of Vilna was crying and crying and smiling at the same time. In a prayer, he was crying hysterical, just on a regular prayer. It wasn't Yom Kippur, it wasn't Tisha B'Av, and he cried, hysterical during the Amidah. Cried hysterical. But towards the end, he smiled and started laughing. So, after the prayer was completed, the Talmid comes to the Rav. He says, Kvod Rav, Lamdeni, teach us. Why was the Rav crying so heavily during the prayer? Did something happen? And then furthermore, why did the Rav start laughing at the end? The Gaon of Vilna tells him that while he was asleep that night, he went up to Shemayim, to the yeshiva of heaven. And over there he learned endless amount of Torah. When somebody is precise with their time in this world and they dedicate their time in this world to learning Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes sure that even their time while they're asleep is used for that same purpose. So the tzaddikim many times have stories of their teachings that they learned in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in heaven, the yeshiva of Moshe Rabbeinu, the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva, and so on and so forth, even the yeshiva of Hashem. Hashem has a yeshiva. And some of these chachamim, literally, each night, they knew they want to go to a certain yeshiva, and they would go to the yeshiva of Hashem, learn Torah with Hashem. They would go to the yeshiva of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. They would go to the yeshiva of Rabbi Akiva. They would go to different yeshivot in Shemayim. That's what you do in Shemayim. He said, I learned an enormous amount of Torah last night. But then, when I woke up, because it was so much, immediately, I didn't want to forget it, so immediately I continued thinking about it. But, because I paskin, the Gaon of Vilna, he paskin an halacha that you're not allowed to even think about Torah before you do netilat yadayim. The real the halacha that Klal Yisrael goes by is that you're allowed to think about Torah before netilat yadayim and the birkot hashachar, the prayers of the morning. You're allowed to think, but you're not allowed to learn Torah. You're not allowed to say Torah before you do the netilah and do the birkot hashachar, which a few of them is the blessings on the Torah. You're allowed to think, but you're not allowed to actually say it or learn it and so on until you do the blessings. But the Gaon of Vilna was more stringent on himself, and he paskin that you're not even allowed to think Torah before you do these morning blessings and netilat yadayim. And he said, because I paskin like that, they judged me heavily in Shemayim. He said, you go against your own psak, and you're already thinking about the Torah that we taught you in Shemayim before you wash your hands, before you do the blessings of the morning, which again, to us is not even a sin. Alvai, we think Torah all the time. But because you do, they removed all of it from his mind. And because of that, I could not stop crying at what a tragedy happened to me and how much Torah I lost. It would take me decades to teach such Torah. To just repeat what I said, what I learned. Decades it would take me. But then because I cried so much, the gates of mercy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened up, and right towards the end of my prayer, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me back all of that Torah, and I remembered it, and that's why I laughed. That's why I laughed from joy. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me the Torah because he saw how much I loved it. These are the type of stories that are endless about the life of the Gaon of Vilna. In the Iggeret HaZonish, the Iggeret HaZonish, which is a series of letters by the Chazonish, the Chazonish is responding to some person that wrote some negative words about the Gaon of Vilna. And he responds to him. And he says, in regards to the Vilna Gaon, we relate to the Vilna Gaon as one of the links in the chain of Torah transmission from Mount Sinai, as in Moshe Rabbeinu, Ezra HaSofer, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, which is Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who wrote the Mishnah, Rav Ashi, the Gemara, the Rambam, and then the Gaon of Vilna. He is that chain. He is in that chain. He is in that chain that connects us to Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, the levels that he reached in Ruach HaKodesh, piety, understanding, righteousness, exertion, meaning the sacrifice, and expertise in penetrating the analysis of the entire Torah are unimaginable. We view him as if he is one of the Rishonim, one of the early sages, meaning not from 250 years ago, which is when he was, but rather as if he was at the time of the Rambam, 850 years ago, as he was at the time of the Rosh, as he was at the time of Rabbeinu Yonah and the Ramban. Those sages, we view him then. So that's why when he disputes with the opinions, the Psak Halacha of the Rambam or of the Rif, we have nothing to say about that. Meaning we can't contradict him. He is just like them. Today, if you are a big rabbi, or a rabbi period, you can't say, listen, I disagree with Rav Elyashiv, who was the Gadol Hador just not too long, less than a decade ago, before he brought up, it was brought to heaven. You can't just say, nah, I don't think that Rabbi Ovadia, or the Steipler Gaon, or the Chafetz Chaim, or Rav Wasserman, I don't think that they know what they're talking about. Can't say, even though they were just literally 10, 20, 50, 100 years ago, doing such a thing is a desecration of Talmidei Chachamim. To have, listen, I disagree with Rav Ovadia, not because my opinion, because I have a raya, I have a proof from someone that was just as big, or even bigger from the previous generations. I have a Rambam that says the opposite. I have a this or that. You have a raya, no problem. Your opinion, garbage. But you have somebody that's in his generation that has, or even earlier, that has a different opinion. Okay, you have something. You have something if you legitimately know how to bring it and so on. Or the rabbi knows how to do it. But to just say, no, I disagree, that's desecrating the Torah, desecrating the Chachamim, desecrating Hashem, desecrating everything. That's not how it works. But when it came to the Gaon of Vilna, he would at times write things that would contradict the psak of the Gdolim from 500-600 years before him, 300 years before him, which is practically unheard of. Unheard of. But he says no. The Gaon was unique. The Gaon of Vilna was unique. He was just like them. He was just like them. Therefore, it's like him talking to his colleagues. It's not like us. Even if you study 1,000,000 years, it's not like us. He was something else. He was something else, Rabotai. When Rav Wasserman asked the Chafetz Chaim, his teacher, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring such a neshama that's so big of the Gaon of Vilna into such a weak generation? If he was like the Rambam, why didn't he just put him with the time of the Rambam? If he was like, some even say the Tanaim, meaning Rabbi Akiva, 2,000 years ago, 1,800 years ago. If he was like Rabbi Akiva, why did Hashem bring him to the world at the time of Rabbi Akiva? Why would Hashem bring such a great neshama that's literally doesn't fit in a generation? The Chafetz Chaim answers as follows. He says, because of the degradation of the generations, complete degeneration of the generations, there are times where the generation falls much, much more than the typical fall that we've had since the beginning of time. To such levels where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mercy brings a great neshama, a huge neshama that belongs in a completely different place, a huge neshama, something that's out of this world, to bring it to that generation in order to bring so much light to the generation that it would at least slow down the degeneracy of the generation. And such was the Gaon of Vilna, that he brought so much light to the generation that had the Enlightenment movement and all of these heretics and people that were starting to fight with the Torah at that time, that at least he slowed it down. Unfortunately, the degeneracy continues to grow thereafter, but nonetheless, it would have been much, much worse had he not been in the world. Now, this Iggeret is one of the places that we read and we understand, okay, so you say that they're special, you say that the Gaon of Vilna was special, but who's to say that Hashem thinks that these sages are special? Who's to say that Hashem thinks that these rabbis are special? Maybe it's just your opinion. Maybe Hashem just gave them a lot of wisdom, or they toiled for it, whichever one it is, but so what? In this week's parasha, we have Parashat Behar, Parashat Bechukotai. It's a double parasha week. It's one of the countless sources that if one were to learn it, you would see clearly, without a shadow of a doubt, that it is the opinion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself that the Jewish people are different, are unique, are something special. But not because there's simply a literal verse like there is in many places where Hashem says, you're my chosen people, you're my firstborn, I love you. There's countless places in the Torah that says that. But even in the judgment, even in the laws themselves, we see it. In Parashat Behar, in chapter 25, verse 39, talks about the laws of slavery, where Hashem says, if your brother, meaning a fellow Jew, if your brother becomes impoverished with you and is sold to you, you shall not work him with the labor of a slave. Like a hired laborer or a resident shall he be with you, until the Yovel years shall he work with you. So here, Rashi says that there is a Torah prohibition on giving a Jew tasks that are demeaning, even if he is a slave. Meaning, someone stole money. That was the typical way of how somebody became a slave. Someone stole money. They can't return it. They don't have the money. They spent it already. They went to the casino. They spent it on drugs. Whatever they did. They don't have the money to return it. So, there's no such thing as, we'll wait for it. Maybe give me a payment plan once a month. No. You don't have the money. You have to sell yourself as a slave for a certain amount of time. But Torah Kedusha says that the Torah prohibits assigning a Jewish servant, an Eved Ivri, degrading tasks that would be given only to a slave, such as bringing the owner's personal effects to the bathhouse or putting his shoes on for him. That's forbidden. But wait a minute. You just said he's a slave. Don't you just tell the slave to do whatever you want? only if he's not Jewish. If he's a non-Jewish slave, with the exception of the Canaanites, which are a complete exception, if he's a non-Jewish slave, yes, you could have him bring you stuff to the bathhouse, you could have him put the shoes on, you could have him as your butler, you could have him be a lot of different things. No problem, there's no limitation. He could work in your farm, he could do a lot of things. But if he is a Jewish slave, even though he made a mistake and he put himself in a situation to become a slave, and he's your slave, you're not allowed to give him degrading jobs. Just tell him, listen, why don't you just dance for me? Can't do that. Why don't you just make a fool out of yourself? Can't do that. Why? He is a Kadosh Baruch Hu slave. Just like you are a Kadosh Baruch Hu slave. Hashem owns him, and he's only giving you the right to own him as a way for him to do tshuva. He doesn't give you the permission to degrade him. Why? He is unique. The Jewish people are unique. Many times people have this misunderstanding that the Christian world likes to, especially the heretics from One for Israel and other wicked people, they like to say, oh look, or people that are anti-Semitic, even more so. Oh look, in that the Jewish people say that when Messiah comes, the Gentiles are going to be their slaves. Gentiles are going to be their slaves. 70, it says in the Torah, says to the prophet that 10 people from each one of the 70 nations are going to hold on to the tzitzit of every Jew. So, which means 700 non-Jews in every corner. That's 2,800 for each tzitzit that you wear. If you wear one tzitzit, like 99% of the people, then you'll have 2,800 non-Jewish slaves. 2,800. If you are like Rav Kook from Tveria, and you wear like 20, 30, 40, 50 tzitziot, I don't know how many tzitziot he wears, but he wears many, and some other tzaddikim that are mekubalim, that they wear many tzitziot, they're literally going to have thousands of slaves. Thousands of them. Now people say, oh, see, so it's all about world domination by the Jews. They're going to have all they want is for the non-Jews to be their slaves, and so on and so forth. This is why it's dangerous to hear heretics speak even things that they claim are true from the Torah itself. Why? Because it's a distortion of the Torah. First and foremost, in regards to the non-Jews being the servants or the slaves, you want to call it. Some people are very particular about the language they use. Slaves, servants, it's the same exact thing. It's 100% true. Each Jew wears a tzitzit, will have 2,800 or more non-Jewish slaves once the Mashiach comes. 100% true. But it's not going to be slaves like the Christians think, the anti-Semites think, that like they treat their slaves throughout history where they killed the black people or the Mexican people or the Jewish people, where they destroy them, they rape them, they do all these horrible things. No, chas v'shalom. Torah completely forbids that. What are these slaves? Simply, they manage the world for them. They manage their factory, they produce different food, they work on the farm, they do different things. So then you're going to say, yeah, but why does the non-Jew have to have that job? Why don't the Jew do it? Hold on a second. What is he doing now, this non-Jew? Is he learning Torah day and night in the kollel and becoming a kadosh servant of Hashem? No. He works in a farm. He works at Chrysler. He works at Coca-Cola. He works for UPS. He works for Amazon. He works for a bakery. He works for a bank. He works right now non-stop. And there's no merits for his work. But every day he wakes up 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to hurry up through the traffic, not to go through rush hour, to get to work, spend 8, 9, 10, 12 hours there just to make a living and hopefully live for the next day to do the same exact thing. And he's ambitious and he wants to do it and he's happy doing it. This is what people do in the world anyway. Here, Torah is telling us, once you become a servant of Am Yisrael, when the Mashiach comes, you'll be doing work, but there's going to be merit coming from it. There's going to be good coming from it. You'll be praised for it. You'll be doing something because it is stated in the Torah. You'll be fulfilling a commandment by doing that. It's not demeaning you. No one is whipping you, yelling at you, mistreating you, chas v'shalom, raping you, or any horrible things that the Christians and the Arabs do to the world day in, day out for centuries. No, chas v'shalom. That's forbidden. You will simply be running different parts of the world because you've obviously earned your place by being a righteous Noahide in the first place and surviving the war of Gog and Magog. Because you're righteous, because you learned Torah and you fulfilled mitzvot, but you also operated in the world, you worked for UPS, you worked for the trucking company, you worked for different things, that skill or other skills or simply your body that has the ability to do a lot of different things is going to be utilized to simply run the world for the next 1,000 years until this world ends, until the year 7,000. The world still has to operate. There still has to be food. There still has to be, all types of things in the world. It's not, the world doesn't just end and everybody's just sitting there meditating for 1,000 years. The world has to operate. Who's going to run it? You're going to have all of the Gentiles doing it. Why would they do that? Why don't they just, do it for themselves? Because you're going to want the payment. What payment? Not money. Money doesn't matter after Mashiach comes. Money becomes obsolete. There is no money, there's no Bitcoin, there's no stock market. None of that stuff matters anymore. What are you going to want? You're going to want the Jew to teach you the Torah and elevate your neshama. You're going to want the Jew, your master, to teach you that Torah. So, because each time you get a check, instead of seeing a few extra numbers on a bank account, which you're not even sure it's going to stay in business after the next crash, each time you do work, you get that payment. That neshama, that soul of yours, is elevated to such a point that all of the drugs in the world, illegal and legal, all of them in the world cannot do. It'll give you such joy, spiritual joy. All you're going to want to do is learn Torah. But since there's a necessity to manage the world that we have, everybody has a job. Since the Jew toiled for Torah, mitzvot, and do all the different things, they have the role of teaching that Torah that they learned their whole life to the people that are there. Because 2/3 of the world are going to die in the beginning of the Gog and Magog. 2/3 destroyed completely. The last third, only a part of them are going to survive. Only the best of them are going to survive. So that part that survives, some being Jews, many of them being non-Jews, what are they going to do? Just sit there and meditate? No. What, are they going to watch TV? No. They would never even be in the first place of going to Olam Haba if they would do such a thing. What are they doing? They're living in a world, but a new type of world. A world of holiness, a world of Torah, a world of beauty, a world without evil inclination, without pornography, without charging people interest, a world without killing people, a world without murder, a world without rape, a world without evil whatsoever. But nonetheless, still a physical world. And a physical world needs things. Somebody has to do it. Everybody has a job. Your new payment is going to be spirituality. And that spirituality will give you much more pleasure than your entire life. Your entire life got, even if you consider all of the reincarnations that you ever had beforehand. When a person understands such a thing, they know, listen, even if I can't convert to Judaism because of different circumstances, whether it be financial circumstances, marriage circumstances, living, whatever it is, even if I can't convert, at least I can be a righteous Noahide. Why? Because then I'll survive the war of Gog and Magog. The Mashiach will also save me while destroying everybody else. And then I could be part of Am Yisrael. I could be part of the servants of Am Yisrael, learning Torah endlessly, living in a world of endless good. It's the best thing in the world. Not a slave like people translated to and interpreted to, which is slave with hitting and raping and killing and so on. Chas v'shalom. But needless to say, this is what it says in the Torah. Our holy Torah also says, when it comes to this world before Mashiach, at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, at the time of Bet Mikdash and so on, there were times that even Jews became slaves because of the crimes they made. And because they had to do tshuva. Part of their tshuva was to become a slave. But even then, even when he's a slave and this other non-Jew are a slave, you still can't consider them the same. Why? He's still a Jew. And Jews, in the eyes of their Father in heaven, are unique, are special. Bottom line, this is the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not Yaron Reuven, not even Moshe Rabbeinu. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. This is a law in the Torah, not an interpretation. It's a literal verse. Anyone that doesn't understand this does not have any share whatsoever of the Torah. They simply do not have any understanding of the Torah. Why? Because it literally says it, and that's what it is. A Jew is special. Does that mean that he's allowed to beat up a non-Jew, take advantage of a non-Jew, steal from a non-Jew, hurt a non-Jew in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not. Not allowed to hurt non-Jews. In fact, the halacha in the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, and many other places says that to steal or hurt a non-Jew is even worse than hurting a Jew. To charge interest of a non-Jew, some Chachamim say is a chilul Hashem. It's a chilul Hashem to charge him high interest. Not just any interest, but high interest, 40, 50, 70, 80%, like these cash advance business, these God-forsaken businesses that are destroying the world again, like they have in the past, like they do. Not allowed. Not for Jews or for non-Jews. And the Chachamim that said that you're allowed to charge interest to non-Jews, but not charge interest to Jews, never said that you're allowed to charge the non-Jews anything you want and hurt them and steal from them. Never. Not a single Chacham ever said that. Not the Rambam and not anybody else. You're not allowed to hurt non-Jews. In fact, the Rambam specifically says it's worse if you hurt the non-Jews and you charge them too much interest, because it'll desecrate Hashem's name and they'll think that that's what the Torah says, and it's not what the Torah says. So it's a desecration of Hashem's name. But bottom line is, when all things are equal, everyone is being treated in accordance to the Torah. No one is being mistreated. No one is being raped. No one's being beat up. But there is a circumstance that a Jew that made a mistake and put himself in a situation where he became a slave, and a non-Jew became a slave. Guess what? They are both slaves, but they're not the same. Why? Because the Jew is still unique. That's just the reality. And anyone that wants a share of the Torah of Am Yisrael has to understand that. You want to be part of Am Yisrael? You're more than welcome to convert and become part of the chosen people. And in fact, a convert, according to the Rambam and many other poskim, is considered higher than a natural-born Jew. A righteous convert, not just anyone that fools the Beit Din and now they have some certificate to put on their wall. But someone that's a righteous convert, someone that lives a life in accordance to the Torah after converting to Judaism, is considered higher than a natural-born Jew. So much so that the Rambam says that you have to love each Jew, it's a Torah obligation, as much as you love yourself. But a convert, you have to love the convert as much as you love God. Meaning, more than you love yourself. More than you love yourself. Because you don't have to, you're never going to have to kill yourself for yourself. But you do have to kill yourself for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu at certain times. If someone tells you, either worship Yoshke or I'm going to kill you, you have to die. Somebody tells you, either have an incestual relationship or rape this girl or I'm going to kill you, you have to die. You have to die. Areg ve'al yavo. Arav Nishim again used to say all the time, someone tells you, go to the beach or I'm going to kill you, he says you have to die than going to a mixed beach. Go to a mixed wedding, it's better off to die than to go to those places. Why? It's also the same thing. It's immorality. Immorality, it's Gilui Arayot, it's complete disaster. Someone tells you to worship an idol or die, you have to die as a Jew. Someone tells you to do some type of immoral crime as far as sexual crime, you have to die. Last but not least, someone tells you to either kill this guy or I'm going to kill you, you have to die. These are three conditions where the Torah says you have to die and not sin those sins. So here we see, Rabotai, that we have a Torah Kedusha that tells us there are certain rules, there are certain things, and this is the Torah. This is the Torah. But unfortunately, many people are unlearned, and they're going to view these things as, oh, look, the Torah is promoting slavery, it's not accepted. This is complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Slavery is not promoted by the Torah, but rather it is promoted by Hashem. Hashem himself put it into the world. And even more so, it still exists in the world today. But the slavery that exists in the world today and has existed in the world throughout the generations is not the slavery that's mentioned in the Torah. Slavery that's mentioned in the Torah does not allow the owner to just kill his people or rape them or do whatever he wants. These would be considered crimes. In many cases, if he hurts his slaves, he has to release them. He loses ownership of them. Even more so, it's a crime against the Torah itself. Today, people are slaves to their job, they're slaves to money, they're slaves to women, they're slaves to men, and sometimes they do it for free, sometimes they do it for some form of pay, but they're still slaves. But they don't call it slavery. They call it work, or they call it a hobby, or they call it I love you. They call it all types of things. That's complete nonsense. But even the regular slavery, where people literally have a slave in, they have a butler, or they have a somebody living in there, living maid, or whatever it is, that's also a form of slavery. It's just that the slavery that fits your agenda by having a live-in maid, or by having a butler, or by having some other person that pretty much is there whenever you feel like calling them at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to answer because they're worried that if they don't answer, you're going to fire them and take away their paycheck and their car and so on. You don't like to call that slavery. You like to call that employee. Nonsense. Torah slavery has command from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and has also the protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Slavery of today, complete nonsense. Completely immoral. And unfortunately, many times you'll see that these wicked owners, CEOs, executives, and managers take advantage of their power and torture their so-called employees, i.e. slaves, by making them do many, many horrible things that they wouldn't do otherwise if they weren't scared of a paycheck or some type of defamation. But that's, Rabotai, is a very small example, but nonetheless an example from our weekly Torah portion. It says that the Jewish people are special. If you believe in the Torah, you have to understand that. But you have to understand it in the right way. Not in the Christian way or the atheist way or the heretical way. Where it says, oh no, slavery, God realized it's not good, so therefore it's not in the world today. Complete nonsense. Slavery is more abundant today than ever before. It's just people call it something else. But nonetheless, if you're a Jewish slave versus a non-Jewish slave, you have to know there's a difference. There's a difference. Last but not least, if a Jew put himself in a situation where he became a slave, but he was bought by a non-Jew. He was bought by a non-Jew. This Torah portion says you have a Torah obligation to go and get him out of that situation. Some Christian bought him as a slave because he stole or whatever, he got to some poverty or whatever it is, and now he had to sell himself so he could survive because the Christian is feeding him or the Arab is feeding him, and he became a slave to the Arab or he became a slave to the Christian or the Buddhist or whatever it is. The Torah says you have to go free him. Why do you have to go free him? Because he's special. Now if he's a non-Jewish slave, you don't have to free him. He's a non-Jew. He's a slave of a Jew or a non-Jew. You don't have to free him. You don't have any obligation. But if he's a Jew, you have to go free him. That means you have to go pay to free him, get his father to pay for it, get his brother to pay for it, get his family to pay for it, get the community to pay for it. Nonetheless, you have to pay for it. Why? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? Because, Rabotai, because it's your fault. How is it my fault that he became a slave? How is it my fault that he became a slave? In chapter 25, verse number 35, it says, if your brother becomes impoverished and his means shall decline with you, you shall strengthen him, a convert or a resident, and he shall live with you. Torah says, if you see your fellow Jew, whether he's a convert to Judaism or he's a natural born Jew, but you see that his business is going down, he's starting to lose money, your Torah obligation is go strengthen him. Give him a loan for a no cost. Give him some support. Refer some clients to him. You have to do it. Now, you didn't do it. So what happened? He didn't just lose strength. He didn't just lose some business. He went broke. And because he went broke, eventually he did something wrong, which put him in a situation where he became a slave to a non-Jew. So since you are the reason why he got into this place in the first place, because you didn't help him in the first place. Had you helped him when he first started going down, but not completely bankrupt, he would have never become bankrupt. You would have helped him. He went down. He lost half of his money, 70% of his money. You would have given him some boost. He would have got back up and gotten back on his feet and eventually paid you back. But you didn't do that because you were worried, how's he going to pay me back? I don't know. I really want to buy that vacation house. You're worried about yourself. You don't trust that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you the money back. You don't want to be partners with Hashem, with his mitzvot. Now your fellow Jew became a slave, and now your punishment is, your form of tshuva, your tikkun is, to go free him. You have to go get the money, pay, to free your fellow Jew. Why? He's special. He's special. This, Rabotai, is for your average Jew. Needless to say, for the Levi tribe, which the Rambam says today, the Levi tribe is all of the people that toil in Torah. Anyone that dedicates their life to the Torah, that's in essence the Levi tribe. So, needless to say, the leaders, the Kohen Gadol, the greatest sages of the generation are special. So when you have somebody like the Gaon of Vilna say something, you can't just say, so what if he said it? No. If I have to make major life sacrifices to save any average Jew and treat him in a unique way than anybody else in the world, I have to have favoritism on your most average Jew versus the president of some country. Your average Jew, I have to show him favoritism versus the best non-Jew in the world. Why? That's just the reality. Torah obligation. Torah obligation. Needless to say, if I have to make sacrifices for this average Jew, what should I do for the greatest Jew? For the Jew that's the leader of the generation that brought light to the people and stopped the huge desecration of the Torah that was happening at the time. Someone like the Gaon of Vilna, someone like the Rambam, someone like the Chazon Ish, someone like Chafetz Chaim, someone like Rav Ovadia. What do I need to do for such people, such leaders? This is why people that understand Torah, even if they're not huge Chachamim, but they have what's called Emunat Chachamim. They have an understanding, an appreciation, and faith in the sages that these are it. That's why they're willing to do everything for them. Whether it's give them money, give them time, give them support, whatever it is. When you see real Hasidim next to their Rebbe, they're like, look, little babies. The Hasid could be 70 years old, but next to his Rebbe that could sometimes be half of his age. Because some of the Rebbes today are very young. Could be a Hasid. The Rebbe himself could be half of his age. But the Hasid, he's like a little baby. He wants a little piece of bread or whatever the Rebbe touched. He wants to hear the Chidush from the Rebbe. He just wants to sit next to the Rebbe. You see Sephardic Jews next to Rav Ovadia, it's like everyone becomes like a little nothing. Why? It's like, it might as well be Moshe Rabbeinu. This, Rabotai, is one of the greatest lessons that we have to learn. One of the greatest lessons we have to learn of how to treat our Gedolei Hador, because today there's so much desecration of the sages, so much desecration of the Torah that people don't view the leaders of our people anywhere near what they're supposed to. In most people's eyes, whether you say Rav Kanievsky or you say some local rabbi, whether you say their favorite musician or you say the Rambam, whether you say some soccer player or you say Moshe Rabbeinu, for most people, unfortunately, they don't know so much of a big deal. So much so that it's developed a extraordinary hatred between the people that are anti-Torah versus the people that love Torah. To the extent where situations like what happened in Meron are being shown as if this was actually a planned attack by the Torah enemies that are, unfortunately, Jewish people that hate other Jews. One of the biggest disgraces that happened in the last couple of days is when a well-known heretic, who's a very famous TV personality, one of the most despicable men that ever lived, a person by the name of Yaron Reuven, when he was asked what he thought about the 45 tzaddikim that died and the whole destruction that happened, he says, listen, whether it was 45 here in Meron, Jewish people, or it was 45 people in Taiwan or Indonesia that died from some tsunami, he says, I don't necessarily feel any different. He says, I feel bad for mankind that, some people have died, but I don't see any difference between these Jewish people or some people in Taiwan or something. People were looking at us like, what? He goes, we're not, he says to them outright, he goes, we're not of the same people. We're not the same nation. We're not the same nation. This is a person that was apparently, to my knowledge, was born of a Jewish mother, lived in Israel his whole life, named Yaron Reuven, one of the most well-known newscasters in a secular television in the world, does not see himself as part of the same people as the Jewish people. Doesn't see it. Why? That's what happens. The Gemara says, the Jewish people that hate the Torah end up hating the Torah and the people that follow it, even worse hate than even the anti-Semites Amalek. They hate it more than them. And on them it is written, your conquerors, your destroyers will come from within you. Meaning that our own people, which are supposed to be religious Jews that were at Mount Sinai and so on, unfortunately when they distance themselves from the Torah so much over such an extended period of time, they end up becoming the biggest enemies of the Torah. This is one of the things that was happening in a very large extent at the time of the Gaon of Vilna, and the light that he brought to the world, the light of holiness that he brought to the world, was one of the things that put a stop to it. Now, or at least slowed it down. Now, the Gaon of Vilna, was a Chacham, a Gadol, everything you could possibly say, but he never had a formal position. Meaning he was never the head of the Bedin, he was never the head rabbi in a shul. No, he dedicated his day and night to learning Torah. But one time, the community came to him and said to him, listen, you're the Gadol Hador, we need you to judge on cases. He says, I'll give you one condition. You guys have enough chachamim, enough people to judge everything. Only bring something to me that's new, that no one has ever dealt with before. Otherwise, don't bother me, let me learn Torah. So, one day, the people start seeing that there's a lot of frustration. Why? Because there's a lot of Jewish people coming from out of town, from different cities, different countries, collecting tzedakah. And they get frustrated, like, listen, it's not like people here are printing money and so wealthy. We need to give the tzedakah to our community, not to people in different communities. So, we have to make a new rule. That's it. From now on, it's forbidden for anyone to give tzedakah to these guests. We have to focus all of our tzedakah to our community. One of the people say, hold on a second, we can't make this a rule yet. Well, why not? We have to get the psak from the Rav, from the rabbi. Oh, yeah, we have to do it. Okay, so let's get the Rav. So they get the Gaon of Vilna, and he says to them, what is the problem? What's new? And they tell him, listen, there's a lot of people coming from different cities, from different towns, coming to collect tzedakah. And we really want to build our own community to make sure that all the tzedakah that we have, the people of here have, they should focus here and not give it tzedakah to other people. So we want to forbid it. And the Gaon of Vilna looks at him and he says, I told you don't bother me unless you want me to paskin on something new. They said, Rabbi, this is new. It's a new rule. It's a new law we want to pass. He says, this is not a new rule. This is an old rule. And it's mentioned in the Torah, in Sefer Bereshit, in the parasha, it discusses Sodom and Gomorrah. You want to pass a law just like the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they forbid giving tzedakah to any visitors, and anyone that gave tzedakah to some visitor, they would torture him, kill him, just like they did to the daughter of Lot. So you guys want to be like Sodom. That's nothing new. Obviously, the people got the message and realized how wrong they were, and they didn't pass this rule. But nonetheless, you see how the thought process of the Gaon was, and how much he valued each and every single second. After many years of not seeing his sister made the major sacrifice and journey to go see her brother, the Gdol Ador, the Gaon of Vilna, and the Talmidim tell the Rav, your sister is here. They allow her in. She says, how are you? He says to her, I hope you're doing well. I'll see you in Olam Haba. End of meeting. After not seeing her for a long time. Some say 10 years, some say 40 years, but a really, really long time. Conversation begins with and ends with, I'll see you in Olam Haba. She starts crying, but I came all the way to see you. He says, I'm sorry, I have to go learn Torah. We'll see each other in Olam Haba. There's no time to waste. There's no time to waste. Why? Because he understood that this world is only a corridor. It's only a corridor, Rabotai. It's only a place where you have to collect as many mitzvot, as many neshamot that do tshuva, as many opportunities to help people, as many opportunities to learn Torah. You have to collect as much as you possibly can. There's no time for small talk. Simply no time. Now, the letter begins with the following. Now that we have a little bit, at least a microcosm of an understanding of who the Gaon of Vilna was, at least to some extent, and of course we'll go over many, many other things throughout this series. We'll go over a couple of small things in the letter. The Gaon of Vilna starts off the letter this way. I request of you, my family, that you not be pained whatsoever, as you truly promised me, and also that you not worry. As mother promised me, besides, what is there to worry about? So first, the Gaon of Vilna says, simply, how much he cares about hurting another Jew. She wants to make sure that his dear family does not have even an inkling of a suffering in their heart because he decided to make this extraordinary journey to go to Eretz Yisrael, which literally, in many times, is a life risk. But here he used a unique language where he says, don't be hurt at all. And he says, klal uchlal, meaning don't be hurt at all. Not just don't be hurt, but don't be in whatsoever. Nothing. No pain whatsoever. Why no pain whatsoever? The Talmud Yerushalmi in Masechet Dmai, first section, halacha number 3, says a teachings, a story of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who was one of the greatest sages that ever lived. One day he had to go to Bet Midrash to go learn Torah. And he had to cross the river of Gnai. So when he got to the river, his students are with him. He got to the river, he's ahead of them, because that's the way of Torah. The rabbi always has to be ahead. Many times people feel like they're because they're younger, because they're stronger, they should walk ahead. It's the wrong way. Wrong way. You have the rabbi always be first. Always be first. Needless to say, if you see an older man walking ahead of you, don't pass him. Why? You're making him feel bad about his age. It's bad traits, bad behavior. But in today's world, people have no respect whatsoever for elders. They'll even tell an old man to get up off the chair. It's because they want a seat, even though if they're only 15 years old. So here, Torah teaches us something extraordinary. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair gets to the river. As he gets to, he has to cross the river. So he says to the angel of the river, I need to cross. Split for me, please. And as you would have it, the river splits for him just like Yam Suf split for Moshe Rabbeinu and Am Yisrael. And he passes the river. His students get there right as he passes the river. And I said, Rabbi, could we cross this river also, or is it going to collapse on top of us? You know, the river opened, but we're scared. We're not tzaddikim like you. Can we pass? And Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, the Gemara says to them, only someone who has never in his life ever caused any harm, any distress to another Jew could cross the river without being pummeled by the river and killed. So if you, my dear Talmidim, have never hurt each other or any other Jew, never hurt anybody, you can pass the river. But if you did, even if you don't remember it, you did, the river will collapse on top of you and kill you. Meaning that it's not just how much Torah you know and how good your memory is. No. How much do you love Am Yisrael? How much do you love Am Yisrael? Do you hurt them? Do you like it when they cry? Somebody says, wait, Rabbi, didn't you say to rebuke another Jew that's sinning? Of course, you have to rebuke a Jew that's sinning. But how are you rebuking them? Why are you rebuking them? Are you rebuking them because you want to show them that you're right? If that's the reason, don't rebuke them. Why? Because your rebuke is coming from hatred. Your rebuke is coming from an ego. It's better you don't do anything. Why? You're hurting people, including yourself. You're hurting people, including yourself. Are you rebuking them in a way that is constructive? You're trying to help them? Or you're just yelling in their face just to make them feel bad? If you just yell them in their face and make them feel bad, you're not helping anybody, including yourself. So surely, if you rebuke them the right way, it's one of the highest forms of loving them because you're saving their neshama. Even if you're passionate and so on. But if you're doing it in order to help them, not yourself, you're doing it in order to give them merit, not yourself. You're not asking for anything from Hashem. You just simply want them to have a better life, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. Good for you. Praiseworthy are you, and praiseworthy is anyone that's next to you. But if you're doing it because you like to hear yourself talk, you're doing it because you think you're smart, you're doing it because you want to be the guy that everyone says, yeah, he got that guy to do tshuva, she got that girl to do tshuva. It's better you bury yourself in your own coffin than to do such a thing to another Jew. Why? Because that's in essence what you're doing to them. That's in essence what you're doing to them. Many times you see people, they get inspired by the Sitra Achra. Instead of being inspired by Torah, they get inspired by the Satan. And they start rebuking people on the internet. They start making all types of awful comments, cursing people, yelling at them, calling them stupid, and so on. What person have you ever seen do tshuva because you called them stupid? Yeah, but Rabbi, don't you talk about Gaon and you tell people they're going to get Gaon? Yes, I do. Because that's what the Torah says. I didn't say, hey, you, Mr. Smith, are stupid and that's why you should do tshuva. You have to understand there's a very big difference between talking general and quoting the Torah and getting so crazy that you're starting to insult people. That's what Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair is saying here. If you've never heard another Jew, you'll have a merit to have the river split for you, just like Moshe Rabbeinu. But if you did, you barely have the merit to survive, even without the river. Same thing, same type of lesson came from the Mashgiach, Rav Dan Segel, who a person asked him, who mentioned a story of a person asking the Chazon Ish about how could he attain the highest level of perfection, expecting that the Chazon Ish can tell him, listen, you want to get to complete perfection of the neshama, learn the Shas, Bavli and Yerushalmi, every single year, complete all of them, learn the entire Shulchan Aruch, the 4 bodies of the Shulchan Aruch, learn that, know it by heart, know the Yoreh De'ah, know the such an extent that you can teach it, know the Choshen Mishpat, that you can be a Dayan, know all of the Shulchan Aruch, know all of it. That's what he thought he's going to get. No. Chazon Ish tells him, you want to get to a level of perfection? You want to get to a level of perfection? Pass through this life without causing pain to another Jew. That's how you get to perfection. That's how you get to perfection. And that's how the Gaon of Vilna started off this letter by, instead of telling him, listen, you have to do this, this, and this, before I tell you what to do, I just want to make sure you realize, I am in the process of doing a mitzvah where instead of wasting my life like a lot of people chasing money and how they go and they do what they do, I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. I have a desire, as much as I love you, I have a desire to go see Eretz Yisrael. So don't be sad, because I'm in the process of doing a mitzvah. You should be happy. But I'm still concerned that maybe you're going to be sad, and that's why I tell you. That's how he starts off the letter. That's how he starts off a letter, Rabotai. This is just like, what do we start off a letter with? Dear such and such. That's as much affection as people say. Dear. They call him dear. They call the IRS dear. They call the security officer dear. They call the food company. Everybody's dear, 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 but they don't mean anything. Here, the Gaon of Vilna says, I beg of you, please, don't have any pain in your heart. Don't have any worry. You promised me. Why? Because we talked about it, how this is a mitzvah that I'm doing. I'm in the process of doing a mitzvah, making a big sacrifice. Furthermore, he says, men commonly journey from home for several years, meaning that don't feel so bad, you're not the only one that your father has left. But their purpose is to acquire money, leaving their wives on their own as these men wander destitute. Here he's talking about how most people, they journey, they go, they have jobs that sometimes require them to travel 2-3 weeks out of the month. So it's not so abnormal that I'm going to travel for an extended period of time. You're not alone. But why is he telling them what they don't know? Of course he knows. Rav Chaim Kanievsky says that he's constantly reminding them of the mitzvah that he's in the process of doing. He's constantly reminding them that this is a major situation, it's a major mitzvah, but it's not easy for him to put everything behind, and he's taking their feelings and opinions into account. But they should not compare themselves to other people that have their parents, their father travel. Because while those people's father travels for a few weeks out of the month, chasing something that won't last beyond their lifetime, and sometimes not even this week, and even a day, here he's doing something that will be remembered forever and rewarded forever. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky says that there is the opinion that the Gaon of Vilna was expecting that once he got to Eretz Yisrael, the family would have actually followed him. Further he says, but with gratitude to Hashem, I'm journeying to the Holy Land, which everyone yearns to see, the Jewish people's most beloved. Going up to Eretz Yisrael, Rabotai, is something that even Moshe Rabbeinu yearned so much that the Gemara in Masechet Sotah, page 14a, says that Moshe Rabbeinu literally had a desire to go to Eretz Yisrael, so much so that he was begging Hashem to let him. And when Hashem says no, he says, okay, you won't let me get into Eretz Yisrael as a person. Why don't you let me come? Let me die, turn me into a cow, reincarnate as a cow, so I go to Eretz Yisrael. Hashem says no, because if you enter as a cow, someone's going to take you, one of the Jewish people is going to take you, slaughter you, and make you a sacrifice in the Bet HaMikdash, and in essence, it'll serve the same purpose. Okay, so a bird, let me just go be a bird. No, same thing, the bird can be, kosher bird, can be also one of the sacrifices. Why didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu want Moshe Rabbeinu to come into Eretz Yisrael? Because there was a certain, one of the countless reasons, endless reasons, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's reasons are beyond us, but some of the things that the sages teach is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made an agreement with Moshe Rabbeinu when he said they'll remember you like they remember me. Meaning that everything that Moshe Rabbeinu did became part of eternity. So had Moshe Rabbeinu entered Eretz Yisrael in any way, shape, or form, whatever he did would have had to become eternal, just like the Torah. Just like Torah Moshe, the 5 books of Moses, is eternal. Him going into Eretz Yisrael would have become eternal, meaning that he would have actually built the Bet HaMikdash. And if he would have built the Bet HaMikdash, that Bet HaMikdash would have been indestructible. No one would be allowed to destroy it, including Hashem. He would put a rule on himself, because that's the agreement they had. Now you would think, oh, that's a good thing. Not a good thing. Why not a good thing? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu already knew. Because he's not bound to time. The past, present, and future are the same thing to him. He already knew that Am Yisrael is going to sin in the future, to the extent where their lives will be on the line. The Satan would come to him and say, listen, they sinned, they worshipped an idol, they murdered, they said Lashon Hara, they desecrated Shabbat, and so on and so forth. So much so, they filled up the cup to the end, and it's already spilling over. The Torah says you have to kill them. And Hashem, what did he do when it actually happened, the first and the second Bet HaMikdash? He told the Satan, you're right, they did sin, but I have something that's equal weight to Am Yisrael. What is it? The Bet HaMikdash. So instead of killing all my people, I'm going to give you some, but the main thing is, I'm going to give you the Bet HaMikdash. That way, I can still have my people left in the world, and Bezat Hashem, they'll do tshuva, and get back to their glory. Because that's the promise that I made, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that I'll never destroy the Jewish people. But had Moshe Rabbeinu entered Eretz Yisrael, Hashem would have not had that option. Because if Moshe would have built the Bet HaMikdash, Hashem would have not been able to destroy it, and Chas v'shalom, he would have had to destroy Am Yisrael. So that's why Kadosh Baruch Hu did not allow Moshe Rabbeinu to enter Eretz Yisrael. But the question the Gemara asks, why did Moshe Rabbeinu want to go there so much? Why did he want to go to eat Israeli watermelon? Why did he want to go? Moshe Rabbeinu desired to go to Eretz Yisrael because he wanted to fulfill the mitzvot that are only possible to fulfill in Eretz Yisrael. And that's in essence what the Ramban also did when he journeyed to Eretz Yisrael, because he left all of his possessions late in his life in Spain just to be able to go fulfill those mitzvot that could only be fulfilled in Eretz Yisrael. And that's what the Gaon of Vilna was trying to do here. Leave everything behind. Why? There are some mitzvot. Not that he's lacking mitzvot, but there are some mitzvot that I can only do in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore it's worth it for me to leave everything to go try to do it. To go try to do it. That's the sacrifice he was making for the sake of doing another mitzvah. Most people, you have to convince them just to put on tefillin. You have to convince them to keep Shabbat. You have to convince them to do any mitzvah. Here we see why the Gedol Ador is the Gedol Ador. Everything on the line. The pain and agony of not seeing your family, your wife, your kids, all the things that you have, the comfort you have, everything else. Why? I have a mitzvah to do. I have a mitzvah to do. It's not like getting on a plane, you'll come back in a week. Most people, they make a journey. They don't necessarily succeed in those days. That's the reality, Rabotai. And he's sharing with them that this is not an easy thing for him. Why? Because he says the following. You, my wife, are also well aware that I have left my children, for whom my heart pines, as well as all my precious books and the majestic splendor that is my home. And I am as a stranger in a foreign country. Indeed, I have left everything. Here the Gaon of Vilna shares his pain. What pain? The pain that you have to understand. What do I love most? I love my kids. I love my wife. I love my books. That's my life. That's where I am. Even though he spent a lot of time learning Torah, his own son says that the Gaon would be constantly worried about his kids to make sure that they're always taken care of. They're always taken care of. They always have what they need. They're always healthy. They're always everything. Nothing is missing. That's why one of his greatest Talmidim was his own son, Rabbi Avraham. Rabbi Avraham became just like the Rabbi Chaim Volozhin and Rabbeinu Zalman, talking about how his father, the Gaon, studying Torah 20 hours a day, 22 hours a day, but he still cares about the food that they're going to eat. Many times Rabbi Avraham says that his father would give his last meal to some poor people. He saw somebody doesn't have food, he just gave him his food. But one of his favorite mitzvot was to help poor women get married. Poor women didn't have any money, didn't have parents. He would spend a lot of time, resources, money, and so on to fulfill this mitzvah, to make sure that this poor woman gets married. Achnasat Kala, it's an extraordinary mitzvah. There are certain tzaddikim that love this mitzvah, and they're willing to spend money to help people get married. It's also a skulat to help your kids get married, and so on. Many times people have a problem with getting their own kids get married and so on, or themselves married. One of the things to do is to help somebody else get married. Be very generous. No one has, okay, yeah, I donated $120 to the campaign to help somebody get married. It's good, but, if you have, instead of $120, you have like $12,000 or $15,000 or $5,000, you have something, substantial in your bank account that you can give, it's most likely that you'll need to give more of that, because it's a very, very big mitzvah. And the Gaon of Vilna loved this mitzvah. Loved this mitzvah. Baruch Hashem, our organization had the merit to do that several times. Help a few tzaddikim get married, pay for weddings, and so on and so forth, of people that did not have any money. And it's one of the things that I only mention just simply because it has to do with the shiur. I always tell you, there's a lot of things that the organization does that we don't discuss, we don't have campaigns for, and so on, because it just takes a lot of time to do these things. But when there's a need, Baruch Hashem, a few times that it's come to us, we've helped and make sure that not only they have the ability to get married, but it's a honorable, respectable wedding. But again, not just anybody that knocks on the door says, hey, listen, can you just send me $20,000 because maybe I'll get married one day. Doesn't work that way. But nonetheless, it's a very, very big opportunity that a lot of people don't understand the magnitude. The Gaon of Vilna, his son says, Rabbi Avraham says, it's one of his favorite mitzvot. One of his favorite mitzvot is to, can't say a favorite because we're not him, and I don't think that the Gaon would even say such a thing that there's a favorite, but he spent a lot of resources, a lot of effort to help get people married. Help the Kala get married. So now, he's telling us here about the pain and agony that he has leaving his kids behind, leaving his wife behind. And some people are saying, wait, isn't he concerned about the mitzvah of teaching his kids? The Shla Kadosh says that realistically though, the main source of chinuch for children comes from the wife. So the Gaon of Vilna leaving his kids behind, he's leaving him in the best hands. He's leaving him in the hands of his tzadikah wife. But nonetheless, still having a lot of pain. But one of the interesting things here is that he talks about how he's leaving his books. Now, typically, somebody goes on a trip for a month, 2 months. They don't take their entire books show. Maybe they'll take a book, 2 books with them. The Gaon of Vilna spent so many days and nights with his books. They were like his children. It's in the same sentence as his children. It says, it's agony for me not to be next to my books. Agony. I know some people like that. That their books are like their kids. They have to be next to them. Yeah, but you're not going to read it. Yeah, but it's next to me. Yeah, but you're traveling and there's 2 suitcases. 3/4 of what you have in the 2 suitcases are books. You're only going for 3 days. What do you need all these books for? You're going to read all of them? What are you, Rabbi Vadia? You're going to read all of them? I need to have them. For what? They're my books. That's how it is. That's how it is. One of the Gedolei Ador, Rav Baruch Ber Leibovich, Alav Shalom, in 1939, when the Russian army captured the city of Kamenetz from the Germans, they were told they have to leave immediately. Their lives are on the line. Go and join with the Bnei Yeshiva of Vilna. So, Talmidim were getting ready, but the Rav Baruch Ber Leibovich, was still there. What was he doing? Crying next to his books, hugging them, hugging his books. Like, Rebbe, we have to go. He was crying hysterical. Why? My books. He couldn't leave. They literally, life was on the line. Two Talmidim had to pull him away, physically pull their Rebbe away from the books. Why? Pikuach nefesh. And he couldn't bring himself to leave him. He couldn't bring himself, physically could not bring himself to leave his books. He had to have his Talmidim save his life. From what? From leaving his books. That's Chachamim, Rabotai. That's Chachamim. One of the most touching things I've ever read in my life. Anyone that reads the bio of Rav Ovadia, it's a fantastic bio, highly recommended for any person. It's just an amazing life. But one of the most touching things I've ever read in my life is the end of the books. Is the end of the book of how the author really puts things in perspective and has as if a conversation between the books and the neshama of Rav Ovadia saying goodbye. Both my wife and I, because sometimes Baruch Hashem we had the merit to read together. We read out loud to each other. It's one of the best things, if not the best things you can do with your spouse, is to read Torah together out loud to each other. Also, you can watch a shiur together, but read a book together. Sometimes one is better than the other, depending on the couple. But reading a book together is one of our favorite things to do. And B'ezrat Hashem will succeed to do it for many, many, many years. But we read this book together, the bio of Rav Ovadia. Every time we'd have an opportunity, 2 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there, Shabbat, whatever it is. Yeah, you read together. It's one of the things that connects the neshamot. And every couple that I ever talk to that has shlom bayit problems, one of the primary suggestions that I give them is read Torah together. Study Torah together on a regular basis, especially reading a book together. Especially if you're reading a bio of tzaddikim, it's very good. Very good for the neshama. You're reading together and so on because it connects the neshamot. It makes the life of a couple very different than a couple that just purely based on physicality and so on, because it connects the neshamot. But anyway, when we got to the end of the book, and it talks about this conversation between the books of Rav Ovadia that he toiled over his whole life, reading and studying and writing and reading and just literally his whole life, his only desire that he had left in the world was just to learn Torah. He didn't have any human desires. All he wanted to do is to learn Torah. Here you have the neshama of Rav Ovadia leaving the world, and the author did a fantastic job putting this in perspective. And you see me and my wife reading this last section of the book, and both of us are crying hysterical. Now, if you just go, you have that bio in your house, you go to the end, you're going to read it, you're not going to cry, you're not going to think anything, you're going to think I'm crazy. You read the whole book, you connect to it, you'll see. It's amazing. Why? If you read, you learn, you dedicate your life to Torah, you can relate to this. If you've never learned Torah in your life, this sounds like some crazy person. The Gaon of Vilna writes a letter to his family and includes his books in the letter. Why? It's also his family. Rashi, alav shalom, says, you want friends? Get more Sfarim, more books, more Torah books, not books Harry Potter and nonsense. Get more Sfarim. Why? You have a Rambam. You toil over a Rambam. It's like Rambam is, that's it. It's part of your life. It's part of your life. It's your Saba. It's your Saba. You need some commentary? You open a Rashi. That's it. Rashi's in your house all the time. Rashi's in your house all the time. You don't think with yourself. You think Rashi. Onkelos. Oh, I have a convert to my family. You do? Oh, I thought you were a 7th generation Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Litvish Chassid. No. I have a convert in my family. What convert do you have in your family? What, your brother-in-law, your cousin-in-law? I thought he was a Jew also. No, they're all Jewish, but I have a convert in my family. Who? Onkelos. Onkelos is my family. Onkelos? You have a cousin named Onkelos? No, it's my grandfather. I thought your grandfather's name was Gavriel. No, yeah, my grandfather's name is Gavriel, but also Onkelos. What Onkelos? Onkelos! All day I'm with Onkelos. It's my grandfather. What do you think, I'm going to read some stranger's book? My grandfather's Onkelos. Sounds crazy? That means you didn't read Onkelos. That means you never toiled over Onkelos. Rabotai, that's how it is. That's how it is. You connect to the Chachamim. Nothing better in the world. Nothing better in the world. One of the things, I have a picture of Rav Wasserman, a few pictures in my house. One of my pictures I have in my office, I have Rav Wasserman over there. I'm scared to look at it though. After doing the series of the Iggeret HaMashiach, the era of Mashiach, I have such a connection to Rav Wasserman that I look at his face, I get scared. From the kedusha that he has, I get scared. I look at him and I go, I'm sorry, I'm going to do tshuva. The picture, what? If you just had a picture, you bought it at a store, you have it on the internet, okay, you have a picture. You connect to the tzaddik, you understand who these people are. By toiling over their Torah, that's it. It's like a family member, it's a father, it's a grandfather, it's a teacher, it's a rabbi, it's a everything. It's a everything. Some people just buy pictures because they like the looks. Okay, you like looks, okay, good luck to you with that. You put tzaddikim in your life because you toil over their Torah, there's nothing better in the world than that. The Gaon of Vilna says, I miss my kids. My heart pains over it. I miss my wife, my bite. I miss her. I miss my books. Meaning I did all of this even though it breaks my heart because it's a big mitzvah. It's a big mitzvah to do Mesirut Nefesh on, to go to Eretz Yisrael, to try to fulfill some mitzvot that I can't fulfill in America. I can't fulfill in Germany. I can't fulfill anywhere else in the world. I can only fulfill in Eretz Yisrael. And hence he is telling us that this house that I left is a majestic house, is an extraordinary house. Not because of the looks and the chandeliers, but rather the house that I left is full of all of the things that I love most. My wife, my kids, my books, and how even the walls I miss. The walls. Why? Because the Gemara teaches us in Masechet Ta'anit, page 11a, that even the walls of a person's house will testify, what did you do in your life? Were you really a tzaddik or were you a rasha? Why? Because in the streets, in the synagogue, in the Bet Midrash, in the office, in the Congress, you can pretend to be whatever you want and fool everyone. When you go to synagogue, everyone looks like Moshe Rabbeinu with the talit on and the tefillin and the beard, and everyone looks like Moshe Rabbeinu. Everyone. 5 minutes later, he could be killing somebody. Everyone looks like Moshe Rabbeinu. You can't tell who's righteous or who's not. In the office, everyone looks like, oh, he's generous. He just bought him coffee. He just took this. Everyone looks. But in your house, what do you do when no one's looking? What do you do when no one's looking? You know who knows? The walls of your house will testify. The walls of your house will testify whether you're righteous or not. And the Gaon of Vilna says there's so much kedusha in my house. It's a majestic house. It's a majestic house. It's full of kedusha. The walls have absorbed all of that kedusha. I even miss the walls. But needless to say, despite all of that, I still had to make the sacrifice to make this journey. Such is the way of the tzaddikim for a mitzvah that some people don't even think is important. That's the difference between the tzaddikim, the gedolei hador, and the rest of the people. Be'ezrat Hashem. Next week we will continue this series and go further into the letter of what the Gaon of Vilna tells his wife in kids, his mother, of how to manage in a world full of temptation, full of Yetzirah, neighbors, Lashon Hara, all the things that each and every single one of us deals with. How do you deal with all of those things? B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll delve into it. Thank you for joining me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of us to not only start this series, but to complete it and to absorb it and to apply it in every aspect of our life, and even more important than anything else, to share it with the rest of the world around us, whether it's with people we know or we don't know, because surely if it's helping us, it can help others. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.
Seven years of lectures. Seven months of film editing. Countless hours of study by two rabbis. Information we received over 3,000 years ago. All for this moment. Tikkun HaBRIT, the movie.
There's a small member in your body. It shouldn't take over your whole life. If you satiate it, you're never going to have enough.
The Sofer clan, when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go.
Time for us to rectify what we have
The
done.
normal number should be somewhere around 20 million or higher.
You're never going to have control of it. If you start it, and only feed it when it's permissible according to the Torah.
Pornography is as addictive as crack cocaine.
You're always going to be happy, including this world and the next. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen.